Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for distancing effects. Woo. This is a fun one. This is a lot of famous shows. A lot of this will be stuff that you're familiar with. I definitely encourage you to uh, talk as much as you want about the musicals that interest you. So these are big budgets, big profits, big audiences, big business. We're going to talk about Andrew Lloyd Webber. We're going to talk about Les Miserables or Les Mis. And we're going to talk about jukebox musicals and Disney musicals. So, yeah. So in the 1970s and 80s, musicals had to compete with a lot more sophisticated big budget entertainment. You've got blockbuster films. Think about like Star Wars or Indiana Jones or those kinds of films that people would go to see in the theater. Think about cable TV emerging in the 70s and 80s. So people have more entertainment choices. When VCRs were a thing, people would rent videotapes and then they could see any movie they wanted within reason. During this time, there was a renewed emphasis on the live nature of live theater. You've got visual effects, you've got sound effects, sometimes big stars would be in a revival of something and you could see them in person. Musicals started to receive some of the same marketing treatment as other media franchises. You've got logo design, you've got merch, as well as soundtracks. People would go during intermission and buy a t-shirt that had the Phantom of the Opera mask on it. Think of a musical that has a well-known logo. Chances are it's from after 1970. Some absolutely outstanding writing and performance during this time. This is concurrent to Sondheim working on more artistic and metaphorical material. Writers like Andrew Lloyd Webber were upping commercial and critical appeal together in different ways. Overall, these entertainments are exciting, but one reason this chapter is called Distancing Effects is that making musicals much larger than life creates a kind of distance between the stage and the audience. So Lloyd Webber, he's one where you don't say Webber as the last name. It's like a double-barreled name, so you say Lloyd Webber as his last name. I know, fancy. He was born into a musical family. His brother is another Lloyd Webber, a well-renowned cellist. He dropped out of Oxford to study music. He achieved a lot of success early in life. He met his long-term creative partner, Tim Rice, early on. He wrote Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Jesus Christ Superstar, and Evita by the time he was 30. That's amazing. He had really good, even today, pop sensibility that merges with smart choices of subject for people to go and see. He wrote great parts for singers too. So an example from Joseph, and it's hard to find good clips of it online. That's just a little heads up. It's making a story from Genesis that people know, fun and entertaining. It's hard to find good clips of it online, but here's a Fever Dream filmed version to give you some ideas of the music. Joseph's Coat song remains a fun patter-like song where they list all the colors over and over again. Jesus Christ Superstar always attracts all-star type casts. Recently, former Spice Girl Mel C played Mary Magdalene, and here she is singing Everything's All Right, which became kind of a spin-off song from that show. Another spin-off song from that show that, was played on the radio at the time was I Don't Know How to Love Him, and this is Yvonne Elliman singing that in 1973. Even the early works were really, stellar and successful. Evita created two of the best theater performances of all time. I'm happy to fall on that sword. Patti LuPone as Evita Peron and Mandy Patinkin as Che Guevara. I really, really wish that someone had filmed all of an entire performance of them in these roles. When you hear how they sing on that official soundtrack, it really makes you wish you could see it in live. But I have what I have to share with you. We've got their 1981 Tony Awards performance. So I guess I said biopic, but I guess biomusical would be the more accurate thing. It's about the rags to riches life and early death of Eva Peron. She was married to a dictatorial ruler, Juan Perón, but she was very, very popular with people. Think of the way people today talk about Princess Diana as a tragic figure in England. She was kind of similar to that, but she was maybe a little bit more assertive. But, she was the person who would go on these tours around the world. People would meet her and like her and talk to her. She was glamorous. And she died quite young. This is another video. This is Mandy Patinkin live, singing The Money Kept Rolling In. And it's amazing that someone somewhere took a giant brick of a VHS recorder to a Broadway production of Evita and somehow kept it under their coat or whatever. And I know it's not good intellectual property, but this is often the only way to see these moments in history. And you'll also see, if you read the comments section of YouTube, which I don't normally advise, you will see how many people who saw this cast doing this show and they were totally ruined for other shows and other casts. So it makes you kind of wonder what other original casts you wish you could see. In my case, other than this show, I'd really like to see the original Oklahoma, because those critics were so polarized. I want to know what it was like to be in that room and, see the people who were really excited and then the people who were mad that the dancing girls didn't show up. Ha ha ha. All right, time for Cats. Okay, so it is surprising that a musical is based on something by T.S. Eliot, but Cats is. It's kind of an odd writing choice for a high modernist poet, but, cats are cool. Take a look at the logo to your right. We have a logo assignment in this class, and I'm going to go through a couple of these briefly for you, so you can kind of get used to breaking down what is in these images. And you look at the font. In this case, it's a sans serif font. It kind of looks like a chalk scratch. The S looks a little bit like a cat tail, but I don't know if I would go that far. But, it looks a little bit like you'd see it in chalk. Maybe it's an urban setting, something modern. You see how there are cat eyes, but you also see that there are human performers shadowed in the pupils, which shows you what kind of dance you're likely to see. It's a simple color palette, just 3 colors. It's eye-catching, and it was excellent publicity. And also it was, kind of a flex. People knew that you had been to see the show somewhere if you were even wearing a shirt. This is before internet ordering. This is before all kinds of things. So if you had a t-shirt from a show, you had been there most likely. The most popular song from this, and this is where, Lloyd Webber is a really good popular song writer. Memory, covered by many artists. This is a recording from Barbra Streisand singing it, who, she's really great at phrasing and tone, so I want you to be able to enjoy it. But, this one also played on the radio. It wasn't like, The Farmer and the Cowman Should Be Friends is a fun song from Oklahoma, but it probably didn't make it onto the top 40 at all. And when you had, this is kind of circling back to Tin Pan Alley, when you had a very popular song, it would also draw people back in to see the musical. The Phantom of the Opera. Okay. So this was a mega, mega hit. It was impossible to get tickets. It was kind of like when Hamilton premiered in 2015. It's the story of a creepy and disfigured man who lives under the Paris Opera House. He falls in love with a beautiful singer and understudy. He becomes obsessed with her even though she loves another man. You know, he and she connect in a way, but he's also kind of forcing her, which isn't good. So it can't really work out. But yeah, we'll keep talking. We'll keep talking. I'm not talking about the logo on purpose because it's a version of it is going to be in your assignment. Hello, kitty cat. We have a cat talking to us. Maybe because we're talking about cats, Midnight. Oh, good girl. Another selling point for Phantom was a surprise sort of gimmick. At one point, the chandelier seems to fall on the audience at some point. I've got a video for you that's a compilation of crashes. People, in addition to this, really loved that it was a musical, so it wasn't that, like, uptight to go and see, but it's also people singing in a more operatic range or style. The character Christine hits lots of high notes because she's supposed to be an opera singer, and it's a pleasure to see her perform. The part was originally written for Sarah Brightman, who's shown to the right. She was married to Andrew Lloyd Webber at the time, you know, so, okay. And Michael Crawford, the original Phantom. There they are in full 80s glory. Here's a video which includes dry ice, big hair, and all the spectacle of the 1980s. Speaking of the 80s and French people, we've got the mother of them all, Les Miserables. It's not actually about the French Revolution. Victor Hugo's novel is about the period in the early 19th century after Napoleon through about 1832 when there was a rebellion in Paris. It focuses on a man named Jean Valjean, which is sort of a John Smith type of name, you know, John Johnson kind of. He serves a long prison sentence for stealing a loaf of bread. In a sort of early new Jim Crow type of thing. He can't find work because he's a convict, so he thinks he's going to start stealing again, and he doesn't because he meets a kindly priest who helps him start a new life. However, a police officer named Lieutenant Javert wants Valjean to acknowledge his criminal past, and he stalks him. And Javert is, you know, in terms of characterizing corrupt police, cares more about his own power trip than about actual justice. Along the way, Valjean tries to lead an honorable life, taking in an orphan after he sees he's wrongfully dismissed her mother, and helping to save people in need. Has a catchy, revolutionary feel, good message. Love those homoerotic undertones of a guy who's really, really obsessed with another guy and follows him around everywhere. Also popular during the U.S. 1980s. There's a huge wealth gap. President Reagan was criticized for not doing very much for the poor. And honestly, people still debate the injustices of the justice system and advocate for reform, so it's still pretty relevant. It's a bit swerfy, which means sex work exclusive radical feminism. So the sex workers aren't necessarily treated that well. It kind of comes off as, all sex work is something you only do when you have to, when you have no other options. But it's of the 80s, so that's somewhat to be expected. And so the logo itself comes from the original novel's illustration of Cosette. And these examples here are Colm Wilkinson as Jean Valjean singing Bring Him Home, which is a stunning performance, and then Javert's death scene, played by Philip Quast. And finally, jukebox and Disney musicals. We've got The Lion King here. Make sure you watch that clip for the puppetry. And jukebox musicals, this is a list of countdown of top 10. Mamma Mia, We Will Rock You, Moulin Rouge, etc. So many fun shows today. Thanks all.